Hello, everyone. Welcome to the April 1st edition of the Contributor Experience GitHub Administration Subproject. A reminder, this is being recorded and will be posted to YouTube. We also abide by the CNCF Code of Conduct. Please be excellent to each other. First item on the agenda is Nikita.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch base on the remaining items that need to be done for the master, to broadly announcing the master to main migration. I know there are a bunch of things, but just wanted to talk about it because it's all over the place and I'm a little confused where we stand at right now.
Okay, so I'm in the middle of trialing migrating the Slack-Info repo from old branch to new branch. And I'm doing this to see if GitHub has in fact fixed the problem where all the PRs would trigger reruns of all the jobs. That's sort of the biggest technical hurdle for migrating Kubernetes, and any of the any high traffic repos. Assuming that's done, then it's basically sort of a lot of coordination toil. I was really hoping to try and reduce some of that by updating any jobs that use Bootstrap and any jobs that use pod utils. Many of them are both hard-coded to the master branch name. And in an ideal world, we would update both of those utilities to support cloning from the default branch and just have it magically work. If we don't get to it before then it's just telling people and reminding them that hey, you're gonna have to kind of do some changes in lockstep and you will break something either before or after, and you'll have to quickly make PRs to change that. If somebody wants to help solve those problems, that's cool. I'm trying to solve them, but with the bandwidth that I have. Or we can just say, go nuts, move fast and break things if you're willing. I think I'd also expressed some concerns about having sort of the key or core repos, whatever, in a mismatched branch state. Maybe that's just me being a little obsessive, but in terms of muscle memory, I have found it frustrating in the past to bounce between repos, and one of them's on main and one of them's on master. And so that was really the main reason I was pushing back on renaming Kubernetes Communities branch. But if you don't think that's a problem, we could totally do that. I have adjusted because my muscle memory is now MA tab, and it will work for whatever the branch name is. That's all that I'm aware of.
I think it's fine to wait, personally.
Sorry, go ahead, Nikita.
It's okay. I was just gonna say, I think it's fine to wait until we're at a position where we can update all the main repos.
If I were to back up for a second, though, we're all kind of starting to look at 122 and what our 122 plans are. So to me, the big question is, do we want to push for this in the 122 timeframe? If yes, okay, let's make sure we're committed to it. But I don't want to defer that decision until shortly before code freeze, for example, right? I feel like based on everything I've listed, we might be ready. Something I at least am personally aware of is that some of our employers might also be trying to sync this repo downstream, and they might also have branch names and whatnot hard-coded. So there may be some dependencies that we're not aware of, publicly speaking. I honestly don't know what the impact is or how long it would take to address that. I can only speak on behalf of my employer, but maybe other people's employers are in a similar situation. I don't know.
So my suggestion would be, number one, I don't think we can, going back to the original question, is like broadly announcing the docs. I don't think we should do that until we've done the confirm that we're not going to launch a CI storm with anything. So once we've done that and confirmed that what GitHub has told us is like correct, and we're not going to re-trigger every job by doing this, then sending the docs out there as is with the caveats of, hey, if you do this, there is a decent chance that if you're using like these libraries like podutils or Bootstrap, like you may have hard-coded branch names and you may need to figure that out. And then because at that point, then individual repo owners can decide their timeline for that. I think I'm interested where those hard codings are, because that might be something that I could figure out a few cycles to go and correct, because I dug into those pieces of testing for before. On the user standpoint and like syncing up all the repos together, I don't think we necessarily need to do that. I put somewhere. I put it in a gist, and I think I linked that gist in the other docs, and then I was going to like eventually put it in our migration docs. There's some like aliases that you can use. I figured it out. So I basically have one command and one alias that will always check out the default branch and will always refer to the default branch. I can put it in my scripts to always refer to the default branch, no matter what it's named. I think those will be helpful to users to update their stuff so that they can reprogram their muscle memory for a new thing. And then it doesn't matter what the branch name actually is. They're just using like one set of muscle memory. The last point being on core repos. So repos that are delivered as part of the Kubernetes release bundle, or are tagged as part of the Kubernetes release process. So I'm thinking the core repo and all the staging repos at the very least. But any repo that kind of fits that criteria as either released as part of the release bundle or tagged as part of the release process. I think those should move all together. And the timing around when we move those, I think we should like set a target date and then start announcing over and over what that date is, and make sure and through that solve the unknown dependencies. Because I know, like go to that example, I know my employer also on a regular basis clones down and replicates the main Kubernetes repos. But we can't, I would say we can't predict in all the different ways that everybody might be doing this. Like some, the way that my employer might be doing it might be the way different than the way Aaron's employer does it, maybe the way different than other people's employers that are not represented here. But I think as long as we announce like what we intend to do in the timeline, and give folks a heads up, then it's up to you to kind of fix whatever your processes are with our repos. The last point being that selection of that date and communication with that date, I would say we should be in consultation with SIG release on that.
Okay. Yeah, I agree. I'm just, what does your gut tell you in terms of, is it feasible within the 122 timeframe?
So we are in the closing days of the 121 cycle. And in our current pattern, that would be 3 months from now, we'd be closing the 122 cycle.
Fair.
I think it's probably doable, but my biggest concern there would be any changes that are needed for like publishing thought.
So
Bob?
what about honestly doing it after the last release of the year? That's the big lull of downtime. It does sort of put more work potentially on us, but that is plenty of lead time and relatively low activity.
It could be. Yeah, sorry, I don't want to solutioneer here. I'm just trying to sort of give us a gut check. I do think a good, healthy, honest conversation with SIG release is necessary. So quick data point. Yeah, Brow doesn't get re-triggered anymore. Yay! So that's one big technical block down. I could I could potentially see how we could look into having like a post-submit job. But in the world where we migrate to a new branch, we could have something continue to keep the old branch around and just sort of sync it with main. I don't know if it'd be too weird and racy, but that might allow us to act with some sort of deprecation window for that big old repo, while allowing everybody upstream to continue to develop against the branch name that we as a community have agreed upon. And that's all I'll say about that.
I would caution against that from the perspective of, like, if people are developing or are scripting against a branch that we're no longer accepting PRs for, then it just gets tricky when people are opening PRs. Like, do I open against master? Do I open against main? I don't know. I don't know whether the potential contributor pain there would be worth it as far as like fixing other folks' automation.
Sure. I think we now have a blockade plugin that supports blocking PRs against the main branch. I might be wrong. But again, you're right. I'm getting into solutioneering on the fly, and we're almost halfway through our meeting. So there's a bunch to discuss. Do you feel like we have adequately discussed this, or do we want to move on?
The one other action item that I'd maybe call out would be like, maybe we just send an email to SIG release and say like, hey, SIG release, we're thinking about timelines here. Do you have any suggestions? Like 122, 123, like yeah. what is the gut check? Or I think Bob was suggesting end of year, so 124.
Well, we don't know quite yet. That's part of the problem.
I will say this recorded and on the record. I'm operating in a 4-release world until we are told otherwise, and until there is like consensus to otherwise. Because I can't, there a lot of people have brought that up. I can't operate in a 3-release world until we're actually there, which we're not there yet. So until everybody agrees on a 3-release world, we're in a 4-release world right now. So 124, Colin. Yeah. 124. So if but what, like for this initiative, are we looking at a 122, a 123, a 124, or beyond? Like, how does the release team feel about that? And get their pulse. As well as the other question would be, would it be easier early in the release cycle, later in the release cycle? Like, where would a change like this fit best?
I have a standing conflict with the SIG release and release engineering meetings. So if somebody else would be willing to go and talk about this in a high bandwidth place over there, that could be helpful. Or we can iterate up on it in written form. Or one-off, I don't know, whatever.
My suggestion would be start the conversation by email, get the gears turning over there, allow SIG release an opportunity to like discuss it themselves. And then we can kind of, if we need to do like high bandwidth syncs between our group and their group, we can. but at least get it like, hey, this is a thing, get it on your agenda, talk about it. Because we don't know whether we're talking about this again in a 3 month, a 6 month, a 9 month, or a longer time frame. I don't mind drafting that email, and I can solicit feedback on the draft.
I'll tell you what, once I'm done migrating Slack infra, I will draft a PR to update the docs that Nikita hopefully wrote. Thank you so much for writing those again. And then I'll feel a little bit more comfortable, like we've sort of got the state of the state ready to share with people. And I will get that done.
Unless there's anything else on that one, I think, Nikita, you have the next item as well.
Yeah, I just want to understand if we have any blockers for enabling the new issue templates. We're going to ask for KR, or can we go ahead with it, or what's going on about that?
I am personally all for enabling it.
So I guess the thing is that we just need to tell GitHub that we want it for KR, and they'll enable it, and then we write the config, and we're done. Okay.
And I did confirm that both old and new issue templates can coexist at the same time. It's not a, either or.
Bob, are you already either if you want to take the action item?
Yeah, I will follow up on that one.
Okay, thanks. That's all I had. At some point, I think we should walk over the project board, but I don't know what that point
so
is.
Yeah, I'm looking at it real quick. The only other thing that is falling off of my queue, but I'm trying to get it back up, is reviewing the sort of Go rewrite of the org member pruning tool. I know I dropped an early review, so I probably owe a follow-up review. Bob, have you had a chance to take a look at it? Do you want to take a look at it?
I haven't really taken a look at it since it was first open and I made my first comments on it. I have to go back and take a look. That will be a next week problem for me.
That sounds fine. It might be for me too, but I really don't enjoy a new contributor's first experience with this project being the latency that it is. But it's also kind of the way this project runs for really highly bandwidth stretched people. So I'm trying to be like a little nitpicky about operational concerns and maintenance concerns, but I'm trying not to go overboard and sort of compromise towards a merge and iterate type of thing. For me, it's like, I don't feel like it should just be my call when it's like, yeah, I would be comfortable enough running this tool myself. I just feel like since you're the author of the original script, Bob, maybe you should have a say, but if you're comfortable not having that say, that's fine by me too. I just want one more pair of eyes to say, yeah, let's err towards merge and iterate.
The one kind of balancing act is because I've had this mental back and forth myself as well, as far as like how nitpicky to be on things when it comes to merge and iterate. If it's something that if we're dealing with a whole bunch of like bandwidth strapped maintainers, if the iterations are things that are going to be painful down the road, then it might not be worth merging. I don't know if that applies to this particular PR,
no.
But yeah, it depends on like how painful those iterations will be and how soon somebody will have time to look at any iterations that might need to happen.
I'll look into it.
I think. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I think that the main thing that was just being discussed was whether replicate what was done in the first script with the sort of said replace, or use the tooling to re-render the YAML together. And re-rendering it does like just produces a huge diff.
I wonder why that is.
I think that was still the main.
It shouldn't. I did kind of want to get to the bottom of that, because it shouldn't. I wonder if that means the YAML is formatted in a way that the tooling doesn't expect, and then when the tooling renders out the YAML, if we could do like that big re-render first, and then going forward, it won't make everything look weird. So I'll look into that. But yeah,
I'm guessing spacing and
like,
sorting.
Yeah, exactly.
That would be my guess. It's like it's a spacing or a sorting issue. Those are normally the culprits when you're dealing with large YAML diffs.
Right. I'm really trying to approach this from a perspective I've been gaining as I've been iterating on Kate's infra tooling, where I just really want sort of a concise, here's what's being removed and here's what's being added output, ideally as a dry run feature, and then also when running live. So as long as the output kind of makes sense within that context, I don't have large concerns, but I'll figure out how to get us there. The other thing I'm thinking of as I'm looking at the blocked column of the board is sort of the repurposing of Kate's merge robot as Kate's GitHub robot. We did rename an account to Kate's GitHub robot a long time ago, but I don't currently know what the password is to log in as that account. We talked about this at Kate's Infra the other day. I'm going to see if I can figure that out. Worst case, I can't, and we might need to abandon that robot, and we'll create something else. But I do think in the context of 122, I would like to move all of our Parabolos invocations over to Kate's Infra, and have them using a different account than Kate's CI robot to do all of the GitHub mangling. So yeah, basically any of the GitHub management, I would maybe throw label sync under this as well. But any of the things that currently show up on the org dashboard, I want all those jobs to run over in Kate's Infra. I think that's a reasonable confirmation that we've got sort of a GH proxy instance set up and we can handle that kind of load. And then, management of the community is done from community-owned resources. I'll update the appropriate issues. I just thought I'd call the shot now.
On a slightly related note, there is an issue open about renaming FetaBot with Kate's triage robot, I think, and we did that before, but then it didn't work out, and then we just did revisit it. So I'm not saying that I'm going to get to it soon.
I will try to connect with you about the details of that, because at this point, we'll just run that on the community cluster too, and that's something where I do have access to secrets and I can sort of troubleshoot it. The test info on call folks don't necessarily have the time to dig as deeply into this stuff sometimes. So
sounds good.
But I'm happy to help you tackle that.
So I just tossed a link in the agenda. This reminded me of one more thing that I'm going to take maybe like a minute or two over our schedule to talk about if people have like a minute. I just want to get people's initial gears turning about this. So as of yesterday, GitHub changed their format for authentication tokens. They're not invalidating any of the previous ones. So like tokens that are valid are still valid, but new tokens have a slightly different format. So the character set has changed, as well as there's now prefixes on each of the tokens to understand what type of token it is. The big advantage of using the new token format is it also integrates with GitHub secret scanning, so that if at any point a token is like leaked in a way that GitHub secret scanner detects, then they can immediately invalidate the token. So if a token got like pushed to a repo or something like that, or posted on an issue in a log or things like that, GitHub would automatically detect that this token is leaked and would invalidate it, which is cool and something that we should probably use at some point. But to enable this, it basically means we need to rotate all of the tokens in our automation, which is a lift, especially if we don't have access to all the accounts offhand as far as login. But just something to think about, like if we're getting into these accounts, if we're doing maintenance, it's probably a good idea to like invalidate all the current tokens and do a rotation anyways because of this added benefit.
This is a public feature like rolled out to anyone as a GA one? Okay.
Yeah, it's GA.
It is GA. It's publicly announced on their change log as of yesterday.
Yeah.
I would.
If you have, if someone has a link handy, so please share it.
I tossed the link in the agenda.
So I poked the Proud channel, and I think if we need discussion about this, I would say try and get it on the SIG testing meeting, or just, I don't know, make sure there's an issue open in the test info repo, and we can sort of iterate on whether that changes anything. You might be aware at some point in the past we updated Proud. The Proud team updated it so that like it automatically rotates HMAC tokens. I can't remember if it's also automatically rotating GitHub tokens or not, but maybe that is a thing that it could do. So let them know, because I agree, this would be cool. And I am at time. I have to go now. It's been really wonderful to see you all. I will try to start milestoning things over to V122 when I get time to refresh the board. I'm going to try to do that today as I wrap up the Slack info thing. And I will see you all online.
Sounds great. Happy Thursday, everyone.
Bye, Ron.
Later.